Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, we've got Martin Popoff in the co-captain seat here with us once again.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about...
How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing good. How are you doing this Saturday morning, Martin?
All right.
Beautiful,
Pretty
gorgeous day here in New York. I hope up in Canada is kind of the same. So today, a much-requested show. You guys have been asking for Ozzy for months on end. I guess I was kind of waiting to have the perfect wingman for this, and I got him right here in the, like I said, the co-captain seat. So we're going to rank the catalog of Ozzy Osbourne. Of course, the famed singer of Black Sabbath, and of course, a stellar solo career for many, many years. You know how it works, guys. We're going to go from our least favorite to our favorite. We're going to look at 11 studio albums here. So we're not going to include the covers album, so we're just going to look at the other 11 albums proper. And as always, I'm going to let my esteemed co-host here start off with his number 11, and we'll work our way to number 1. So, Martin, I'll kick it off to you.
Okay, so starting off the number 11 slot for me, unfortunately, is the latest album. And, you know, it's a problem I have with Elvis Costello, Alice Cooper. I want these guys to have a band, and this is the actual worst situation. I mean, he's gone through a lot of members throughout the years, but this is the worst situation, unfortunately, with the fact that just there's no band at all. It's just Ozzy and a ton of other people, Chad Smith, Duff Hagen. What's that?
A ton. I mean, I was actually looking the other day at like the cast of characters on this album. There's a ton of them.
I know, it's crazy. So basically, you know, and I don't like the idea of the top hat and the makeup and the expensive gothic clothes and all this. I mean, it's just getting too far away from what I love about Ozzy, right? He's not an ordinary man, and he doesn't look like an ordinary man on the cover. And you know, working with all these, you know, co-writers of everything. It's not an ordinary thing, right? So yeah. So I find this to be a record that is just too gothic, too slow, too modernly produced. You know, it's got the big guest stars of Elton John and the Post Malone guy and all that. You know, there's a few things. There are some surprises and progginess along the way, and like different things you don't expect. And it is very heavy sounding, but it's so modern and heavy sounding. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on too long, but yeah, I just find it too. You know, I liked Under the Graveyard. I thought that was a good one to start off with. Straight to Hell was pretty cool. But no, just in total, it's just way too far away from a band and not being an ordinary man.
Yeah, we'll revisit that in a minute. But I totally agree with you. I'm on the same page with that. You know, I really struggled with, do I rank that at the bottom, or do I rank Black Rain at the bottom from 2007? And that's the one that I chose. You know, either or could be in the bottom position for me. You know, Black Rain, it's the last one he did with Zach. It's got a couple good tracks, but I find that album, you know, and a couple of these that we're talking about at the bottom here, just really unmemorable. You know, when you grew up with Diary and, you know, Blizzard and Bark at the Moon and all those albums. And, you know, he's just cranking out these albums that, you know, you listen to a couple times. Is there anything to really grab you to make you want to go revisit them over and over again? Black Rain for me is probably his most, to me, it's like a throwaway album. When it came out, I was like, all right, it's another Ozzy album. Let's give it a try. But, you know, other than, I mean, you know, Civilize the Universe, decent tune, Not Going Away, decent tune, the title track, okay. But I don't know, just you kind of expect more, and I don't get more with that album. So that's my number 11, the bottom of the heap. Okay.
Sorry, we had a bit of a cutout there. Are we back? You can hear me?
We're back. Yep.
Okay, so number 10 for me, I put Scream. You know, this is the second to last of his. I mean, there isn't here, but it is just Gus G coming in and going out. I mean, it didn't last, sort of thing. Blasco's in there. I love Blasco, but he's a utility guy. He's been in a lot of different things. So it really, to Adam Wakeman, it still doesn't really feel like a band. To my mind, this is as much a Kevin Churko album as it is an Ozzy album. He's producing, he's writing, he's playing the drums. So again, we get another one of these kind of like modern, I call it hot topic metal, right? It's like walking into a hot topic. Right?
That's very true. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like it's this big slow gothic thing. It's kind of the same problem, although slightly different, that Dio had later in life. I mean, basically from the 90s to the end, he got into the slow stuff. He got Magica and Strange Highways and Master of the Moon. He just liked that slow stuff. Black Sabbath with Dio was doing the slow stuff, right? And so Ozzy, he's kind of trying to be modern, and he's trying to be doomy, but it's like a modern doomy. So he's picking up on something from the past. But I don't know. I'm just again finding it a similar record of just being too far away from what I love about Ozzy. I liked Crucify. Digging Me Down was pretty cool. Fearless was pretty cool. But yeah, there's kind of these Nickelback, Godsmack sort of choruses. And it just doesn't sound like Ozzy's personality, these modern records. So there you go, Scream number 10.
Yeah, I agree with that. I personally think, and I can talk about this in a minute, but I personally think Gus G does a fine job on the album. I think he sounds great. He's a great guitar player. But yeah, there's like, other than a handful of songs on Scream, it's like, anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. My number 10, I'm going to go with Ordinary Man, the recent album. Way too many hands in the pie, right? I mean, it's just it just sounds like this collaboration with a million people, and that's exactly what it is. Couple decent tracks. I actually think the track, the Ordinary Man, the title track with Elton, is actually a pretty damn good song for what it is. Is it something we want to hear from Ozzy? That's debatable, right? I don't really like Andrew Watt's guitar tone on the album. I think Slash, in his couple of appearances, does a fine job. He's a great guitar player, right? Maybe he should have done the whole album with Slash. I don't know. But yeah, and he, apparently Ozzy has gone on record saying he wants to crank out another album this year. I don't know. After hearing this album, do we really want another one so quickly, hot on the heels? I don't know. I guess any Ozzy album is a good thing, but I don't know. Ordinary Man for me is pretty ordinary.
Okay, very cool. Okay, so next I'm going to go with Black Rain. And one thing I kind of do like about these later Ozzy albums is imagine if these things were 77 minutes long, and they're not. Black Rain's a 46-minute album. So this is the one with Zach, and Zach is writing, Kevin Churko's writing. I liked Countdown's Begun, 11 Silver, Trapdoor. So it's funny, a lot of these albums, I'm never buying the ballads on these later albums really either. But a lot of these albums, I think a lot of the good songs are kind of hidden towards the end. Basically, anytime they pick up the tempo, I'm happy. But Zach is here, and I think Zach is he's writing the way you're supposed to write for a modern Ozzy album, but it's also like the part of the Black Label Society albums that I don't like too much. This circular, low, down-tuned sort of feel. It's like this modern take on Black Sabbath. So yeah, Mike Borden's on drums, Blasco's there. So yes, he's been a bit of a constant, but no, I just don't feel the chemistry there between Zach and Ozzy, like they are, they're just trying to compete with the young kids, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if the Zach and Ozzy partnership has kind of run its course, right? After all these years, it worked fine for a while, and I still get the feeling that Ozzy has been searching for many, many years for that partner that he had in Randy, and he hasn't found it. I mean, I think Zach was the closest we've gotten to it, but that, like you said, I think that's kind of like it's like a been there, done that kind of feel already. And at this point in the game, is Ozzy going to find that dance partner again, kind of like and recreate what he had with Randy? I don't know. So, and then all the albums kind of feel like, and you said it perfectly at the beginning of the show. It's like, where's that band? It's like Ozzy hasn't had that stable, hot band in quite a while. Yeah. So, number 9 for me, Scream from 2010 with Gus G. Like I said before, I like Gus's playing on the album. I think he's got his tone is great. The riffs are pretty cool on the album. Again, the songs are not that memorable. I do like Crucify. Let It Die is a good song. Let Me Hear You Scream, I think, is pretty good. But overall, another kind of like middling Ozzy album for me.
Okay. Cool. Number 8 for me, I went with Osmosis. I've got two copies of this thing. One of them signed by Ozzy and Zach, and I think the other one's just Zach, and I'm not sure who else. But so yeah, so Osmosis, interesting one here. This is the only one I put ahead or below one of the later ones because as I went through it again, I just realized I did not like a lot of the songs on here. The ballads. The ballads are not great as usual, although they're this one is actually upheld a little bit by the ballads. Old LA Tonight, I'm kind of okay with. But yeah, it's funny. So this is the one Ozzy always talks about as Michael Beinhorn made him sing way too high, and it was really hard to do these songs. So he really found this a pain in the butt to make this album. But yeah, a lot of outside writers on this. You got your Mark Hudsons and your Jim Vallance. Dwayne Barron and John Purdell, and then you get some superstar guys. I mean, writing with Geezer and Zach and Lemmy and Steve Vai and all this kind of stuff, right? Long songs, every single song on here. This is almost like that Iron Maiden problem where you've got songs that shouldn't be this long, but they are pretty long. So it's funny seeing the track listing. A lot of these songs coming in at 6 minutes, but I did not like the heavy ones on here very much. They're just too slow and sloggy. They just give you that fatiguing feel. It also an interesting thing about it. I mean, it does feel like even though it's way up into 1995, I believe, right? I mean, this is way up into the 90s, yet it still feels like the last of the hair band era in a certain extent for Ozzy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my number 8 is also Osmosis. And it's weird because the album kicks off with Perry Mason, which is a pretty damn good song. And I remember getting this album back in the day and thinking, yes. And then the rest of it's kind of sputters. Way too many ballads. You got all these outside writers coming in. Half a quarter of the songs are co-written with Lemmy. What happened to those songs? I find, again, too many hands in the kitchen. And another kind, and I know a lot of people really love this record, right? You talk to a lot of Ozzy fans, yes, Osmosis is great. I don't get the greatness out of this album. Like I said, My Jekyll Doesn't Hide, very cool song. Ghost Behind My Eyes, okay. Thunder Underground, okay. But for me, it starts off great with Perry Mason and then just kind of loses steam really, really quickly. So,
All right, cool. All right, my number 7 is this one, Down to Earth. It's funny. I mean, going through this exercise again, I was pleasantly surprised with Down to Earth. It feels a little bit like the Eternal Idol in the Tony Martin era, where just almost in a random way, all the good songs fell on this album of all the modern era albums. Gets Me Through and Facing Hell. Can You Hear Them is a really cool one. No Easy Way Out. Yeah, half ballad, half cool Sabbathy. That was a pretty cool one. Again, what we get here, the big theme on this one with the outside songwriters is Marty Fredrickson, who's written with everybody. So he's got this basically outside songwriter, writing a lot of these songs. But Marty Fredrickson is a really good chameleon who can come in and write in the style that you sort of want. So even though this is a modern era Ozzy album, I do feel that, this has That I Never Had on it, which is actually my very favorite Ozzy album, probably past No Rest for the Wicked. I mean, literally from 1988 forward, That I Never Had, just love that song. It's really, really cool. Sticks in your head, super heavy. So yeah, there you go. I mean, there's one of the newer ones that I actually put ahead of Osmosis. So yeah, Down to Earth, my number 7.
So I'm going to mimic you once again. So Down to Earth also my number 7. And funny enough, sometimes, excuse me, when you do these shows, you're revisiting albums that maybe you haven't heard in quite a while. And I hadn't listened to Down to Earth in a long time. And I was surprised at how good it holds up. I mean, this is actually not a bad album. I love Zach's playing on the album. I think Gets Me Through is a terrific song. No Easy Way Out is really, really good. Facing Hell is very good. I don't know. I think the playing is pretty inspired on the album. I think the songs it's a pretty heavy album overall. And I was prepared to put it behind Osmosis. And then I listened to both of them back to back. I was like, you know what? This is a lot more enjoyable album, and it holds up pretty damn well.
Oh,
It's like, so
we did the same thing. That's pretty wicked. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, hey, go figure. It's just funny when you dismiss an album when it first comes out, and then years later you revisit. It's like, you know what? That's really not that bad. So pleasantly surprised with Down to Earth. So 2001, man, 19 years ago. It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, I remember we were backstage as an Ozfest, and one of the people in the camp showed us the album cover, idea for it, and said, "What did you think of this?" And I remember saying, "Looks like Marilyn Manson." And he's like, "Hopefully it wasn't a faux pas, right?" Sharon was around. We saw Ozzy back there exercising before a show. It was pretty cool. It's a good memory. That was just in a big parking lot here in Toronto for one of these Ozfests. So
yeah.
Okay, so my number 6, I'm going to go with No More Tears. There you see my Zach. This is a nice Ozzy signature on that one. That's one of the better ones. So I almost put this even behind Down to Earth, because I was playing this and thinking, you know what, Down to Earth really deserves a few more props. But no, I did put this my number 6. I thought I Don't Want to Change the World was a really good, party rocker. This record went 4 times platinum. This was a massive album. This is just as the hair metal era is waning. Nirvana's coming in 1991. And so, this is a time where it's kind of interesting that you see Ozzy sticking with a lot of the tropes of the big hair metal thing, the massive productions, the party lyrics, but he almost seems like early in on the idea of the down-tuned, slow grunginess, which I think, as we've said, plagues the later albums badly. But you actually start hearing that come in on this. Case in point, the title track, No More Tears, but that's a really cool song. And it's really cool how it's put together, that big bass line on it. Zombie Stomp, I thought, was really good. I really didn't mind the ballads on here. Mama, I'm Coming Home and Road to Nowhere. I mean, they kind of, Ozzy's a charming guy. He's a great guy, and he can charm his way into your heart with these ballads sometimes. But I think it sort of worked on this album a little bit, but no, I mean, I almost felt like punishing it and putting it behind Down to Earth, but I did put it as my number 6.
There you go. My number 6, No Rest for the Wicked from '88. Okay. Good album. Obviously the first album with Zach, and I remember at the time when this album came out, I was pleasantly surprised, because it went for a kind of like a different sound from the Jakey Lee era. Some good tracks on here. I thought Miracle Man is a great song. Crazy Babies is really good. Devil's Daughter, Holy War, excellent song. Demon Alcohol. It's big. It's beefy. But it's still, for me, not quite where I want Ozzy to be. But in saying that, and revisiting it, all these years later, I think it's still a pretty solid record. Like you, it's like, I think I kind of look at that album and No More Tears kind of in the same bucket, because they kind of, followed each other. I don't know. I kind of, this part of the catalog, the middle part, I kind of struggle with where to kind of place these albums. And listening back, like I said, I think it's a pretty strong record. It's got kind of a generic feel to it, but I love the guitar playing. I think this is kind of Zach in his very early years, and I think he made a big statement with this album. But it's still, to me, not a great Ozzy record, but I think it's very, very solid. And like I said, I enjoy it. I don't visit that often, but I think it's got a handful of tracks that I dig quite a bit. And so that's my number 6.
Okay, we're gonna butt heads on that one, I'll tell you.
That's fine, right?
All right. So my number 5, right? My number 5 is this bad boy right here, the Ultimate Sin. I just this record was a huge disappointment for me, because I love Bark at the Moon, which you're going to hear shortly. But I'm surprised this is a Jakey Lee album. The production is so abysmal on it. And Randy Castillo's drumming is horrible on it. And I just feel it's awkward and stumbly, and I wonder if this is a producer laying down the law that you got to play a certain way. It reminds me of all the Eric Carr kind of Kiss stuff, where it just feels like the drummer is being told to keep it simple and cavemanish. That's what I find about this record. But no, I just because the production is so bad, I find it pretty unlistenable. I do find that also there. This is the one where he's really trying to go for the hair metal melodies. But because it's so rough and distorted, it just doesn't come off, and there's just no groove on it at all. So yeah, Ron Nevison producing, the big UFO guy. It doesn't sound like a Ron Nevison production. Ron, I'm not crazy about his productions anyways, even with UFO, but this does not sound like a UFO production at all. It's just noisy and messy. So yeah, just a bad sort of era for me of Ozzy. Love the album cover though. Awesome album cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you and I are on the same page again. So number 6, No Rest for the Wicked. I'm sorry, The Ultimate Sin. You know what my issue with this album, when this first came out, if you can kind of put yourself back when this album was first released, I'd listened to this a ton back in the day. And, I think a lot of us were kind of swept up in anything that Ozzy did back in the mid-late 80s. And I saw him on this tour. It was great. It was grandiose, big business, all that kind of stuff. But, revisiting this now, all these years later, it doesn't hold up that well. And I think I probably could have ranked this lower, but I ranked it where it is because I think I have such history with this album, and I had to kind of give some consideration to how much I loved it back in the day. I mean, Killer of Giants is a killer song. I still like Killer of Giants. Shot in the Dark was a good kind of MTV video track, right? I mean, The Ultimate Sin is a good song. The rest of it, though, pretty ordinary. And I totally agree with it. I think he was going for, and we use this term a lot, but the hair metal thing, it's got these, big choruses. He tried to really make the album very, very catchy and squeaky clean. And you know what? It's even like Thank God for the Bomb. I love that song back in the day. I was listening to it the other day. I'm like, that's really not a very good song. And I don't think this album holds up that well. Among the 2 Jakey Lee albums, I think it's definitely the inferior one. But I kind of put it, like I said, I could have put it a little lower. Like, I'm thinking about it now. It's like I probably could have put No Rest a little bit higher here on the list. Definitely over this. But, it's more like you have a history with an album, so you kind of you give it a benefit of the doubt, so to speak, right? So that's kind of where I put it in the list. But like I said, could be lower. Not a great album, but I loved it back in the day. Mm-hmm. Go figure.
Okay. All right, so my number 4 is No Rest for the Wicked. Here we've got kind of a shaky Ozzy autograph on that one. I remember this, and then there's Zach on there. But yeah, so this one, I just feel that this is where they feel like badasses again. They feel like a gang. I think Ozzy and Zach just get along like a house on fire. It's a notorious era for Ozzy. I think Randy Castillo sounds great on it and drums great on it. It just sounds like a totally different band to me. The production is great. It's super disciplined. It's very locked to grid. It just feels like a really, really professional band. Zach comes in there. He's like a skinny New Jersey kid. And I think he just tears it up on this record and does amazing. Miracle Man is probably one of my top 4 or 5 favorite Ozzy songs. I loved the song. I loved the video. Crazy Babies, Bloodbath in Paradise. Even Fire in the Sky, which is a little more of an epic. Only 8 songs on the album, pretty wild. Demon Alcohol. So yeah, to me, this just sounds like great chemistry between the vocalist and the guitarist. I think Zach is this is his finest work with Ozzy, where they just feel like real world beaters. And this album went double platinum. Ultimate Sin went double platinum. So they're a huge band at this point still, right? Yeah. So yeah, I just feel like they sound like they are conquering the world with this, whereas with the Ultimate Sin, they're following hair metal a little, and then with the follow up, they're just like kind of a big bloated corporate band. I just feel like this is their punk rocker album. I just think they nail it on that record.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Zach. I mean, looking all skinny without the big beard and all the muscles, right? It's like young Zach was good Zach, right? I mean, I've been a fan of his guitar playing for a long time. I think he's a terrific guitar player. But yeah, and you know what? My number 4, rank it a little bit higher than yours, but No More Tears, I think, is a pretty solid record. And I love the production on this album. I think this album still sounds huge. And while I don't, looking back on the ballads on here, I guess they haven't aged that well with me, but I find the rockers on here pretty damn strong. Mr. Tinker Train is a really good song. I Don't Want to Change the World is fantastic, right? I mean, it was really cool that Ozzy's still doing this sort of thing in an era where grunge and alternative was kind of, obviously doing really big business. And I still think the title track is a killer song. But it's, I don't know. It's ranking pretty high for me today. If you would have asked me this a couple of years ago, I might not have said that. It's weird how your kind of tastes kind of move around and change over the years on a catalog that you're, really familiar with and have a lot of love for. But yeah, I don't know. I'm ranking this pretty high today. If next week I might tell you something else, but number 4 for me. I think it's a good record. It sounds great. It's got some good songs, and for me, that was probably Ozzy's last really solid album. As we've discussed, I've had a lot of issues with a lot of the rest of the catalog, but I think No More Tears holds up pretty well.
Okay, all right. My number 3 is the debut, Blizzard of Oz. When this first came out, I got an import copy of this when it first came out. Sadly, this is not my import copy. I don't know where that went. But basically, when this came out, we as kids, or what would I have been, 17, were a little disappointed that it was a little bit poppy, commercial, a little bit not heavy. Loads of personality, though, in a very, very distinct band, obviously with Randy Rhoads and that surging kind of overdriven guitar sound. Really cool sound put on the rhythm section, Bob Daisley, Lee Kerslake. Lee does not sound like the Uriah Heep drummer at all.
No, not at all.
It's just a lot of new personality coming out of Lee. But we used to call I Don't Know and Crazy Train disco songs. They have a real disco beat to them, especially Crazy Train, and it's got that sort of sweet and sour melody. I get a lot of heck for saying this. You're never supposed to put down Crazy Train and I Don't Know. Suicide Solution, heavy song, but Goodbye to Romance, you got that on there. You got D on here. Mr. Crowley was pretty cool, but No Bone Movies is kind of a throwaway party song. Steal Away the Night is pretty cool, but yeah, only 9 songs, but really only 8 songs, and just not super heavy. Like I say, loads of personality, and you've got to hand it to them. It's so cool in this era that you could put these guys together that don't know each other essentially, and have this crazy level of personality coming out of the band. But did I like Heaven and Hell more than this album? Definitely, I did. So yeah, it was just we just felt like it was just a little thin on the ground in terms of being a cool heavy metal album. Love that album cover, of course. So yeah, there you go. That's my number 3.
Cool. We're kind of on the same wavelength there, but I'm going to rank it a little bit higher. I'm going to go with Bark at the Moon next.
Okay.
In looking back on this era in Ozzy's career, I felt, I don't know if Jake was the right guy at the time. He's a tremendous guitar player, but you get the feeling that this style of music is not really what Jake wanted to do. And I think, this is a very solid record, though. And I think on Ultimate Sin, we kind of saw how this partnership between these two, because that's the way I look at most of Ozzy's career. It's these partnerships with guitar players, because that's kind of what he's been doing all these years. And I think that the Jake experiment didn't quite work out like maybe he wanted to, but they made a really good first record together. I think this, and I listened to this a ton. I saw them on this tour, and they were absolutely terrific. The title track is classic. Rock and Roll Rebel is classic. Waiting for Darkness, So Tired is a pretty cool ballad. Center of Eternity is fun. Now You See It, Now You Don't. A good band, good album. It's just a shame that these guys didn't kind of go to the levels that I think Ozzy really wanted to. And I think he kind of, we talked about how he kind of captured that magic with Zach in the beginning, but I've gotten the feeling in following Ozzy all this time that he was always trying to recapture the magic with Randy. And I don't know if he ever really did that. And, you know, it's funny, following Jake's career, it's like you know, Badlands, that stuff was great. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff, you know, you want to hear from Jakey Lee. And I think this was a very, very strong first record with these two guys together. But I think they lost a little steam fairly quickly. Terrific live band, though, that I will say. They were very good live, seeing these guys together.
Geez, you're convincing me. I might have to change mine a little, but anyways, I won't. I'll stick to my guns, because on our YouTube show, The Contrarians, I had to be the contrarian, and we did an episode on Ozzy, and I ranked Bark at the Moon my favorite Ozzy album. So
wow.
we'll get to that. But so my number 2 is, of course, Diary of a Madman. And, you know, I mean, I could have put these essentially interchangeable. I'll argue about why I like Bark at the Moon later, but basically, I thought this was a massive improvement over the debut. Great album. Again, you know, the personality just oozing out of Randy Rhoads on here, and the rhythm section, and Bob Daisley's awesome lyrics. Over the Mountain, one of the greatest Ozzy songs of all time. Flying High Again is a cool party one. Don't Like You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Believers, kind of a proggy one. Little Dolls, proggy again. At the end of the album, Diary of a Madman, proggy again. So they have this sort of sound where it's kind of trashy and open and a little bit garagey, but again, that's that kind of Who-like chemistry that they have between these very distinct 4 performers. And of course, this record was made, you know, just like a few months or whatever later than the debut, same lineup. And Tonight I don't like very much. So these are the reasons it's number 2 and not number 1. Although SATO is definitely one of my favorite Ozzy songs of all time. So yeah, to me, this is a little bit like Dio Holy Diver going into Last in Line. I like Last in Line a lot more than I like Holy Diver. But those two are much closer, I think, than the debut, which I think really does fall down with Ozzy. And of course, this is an amazing, amazing record, but I'm going to stick to my guns and leave it at number 2.
That's all right. Hey, got to do that, right? So my number 2 is the debut. I will say, when this album came out, I listened to this all the time. I was hugely into the 2 Randy albums, big time. But over the years, I have really noticed what a kind of step up in quality Diary is over Blizzard. And there have been times, and this week is perfect, is another one, where I have questioned whether I should rank Bark at the Moon higher than the debut. Because I, like you, I have found over the years that there's a little bit of mediocrity on the debut album. And I think the production is much better on Diary. I think Randy's playing is leagues better on the second album. But in saying that, there are still, you know, I don't know, classic song, Crazy Train, classic song, I don't need to hear it again. Suicide Solution is a fantastic song. You know, I mean, it's got some songs that, for me, I'm on a little bit of a burnout. You know, Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, great songs, but I don't really need to hear them again. No Bone Movies, kind of a throwaway tune. Revelation Mother Earth is fantastic. Steal Away, kind of Ozzy doing the boogie thing. I don't know. It's still a great album. It's still a classic album. But it is, like I said, I probably could have even ranked it a little bit lower. I still do like it a lot. Obviously, it comes in at number 2. But I think for me, the gap between this one and the follow-up is getting larger and larger by the year, with me anyway. So.
Cool. All right. So yeah, as mentioned, my number 1 is Bark at the Moon, and I get a lot of heck for saying this. I mean, basically everybody kind of picks Diary. So yeah, Bark at the Moon. What I really like about this is I love the production, Max Norman production on this. I really love the super, solid, sober mix between guitar, bass, and drums. It sounds like a good, properly produced corporate album. So that's something I kind of a little bit possibly more than the first 2. I think Jake does a fantastic song in this, but I'll totally agree with you, Pete. I mean, I love Badlands probably even more than this, right?
Yeah.
The first Badlands, even the second Badlands, right? Love what he did there, and even his later work. He proved to be, over the years, you know, he's this guy that disappeared and stuff, and he's a little bit of an eccentric. But what I've learned from interviewing him over the years is that he's a true artist. That guy, he's a real kind of flighty, artistic, creative guy. So yeah, you've convinced me a little bit that maybe the fit wasn't there. But when I look at this record, I mean, I love the song "Bark at the Moon." "You're No Different," probably one of my favorite of his ballads. "So Tired," not as crazy. "Waiting for Darkness" is a semi-ballad, but I thought it was a really good song. But really, I mean, I would probably put "Now You See It, Now You Don't," "Rock and Roll Rebel," "Slow Down," and "Bark" as probably, you know, again, in my top 10 Ozzy songs. So I just look at this, and the track listing of it is just so superlative and solid as you flow through it compared to Diary, and that's kind of what I like about it. But yeah, I'd say more than anything, to me this reminds me a little bit of No Rest for the Wicked. It just sounds like a band firing on all cylinders. You know, you're right though, Pete. I mean, probably the chemistry is better with Randy, and as I've apparently argued, the chemistry is even better with Zach, at least that one time on No Rest. So maybe this doesn't feel as much like the chemistry's there, but it just feels like a whole bunch of professionals all getting together in one place and doing an amazing record. And you know, this went 3 times platinum. Diary went 3 times platinum. Blizzard went 5 times platinum, obviously on the strength of you know, the fact that we hear Crazy Train and I Don't Know in sports events all the time. Even,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But yeah, I just you know, that Bark and Diary to me are almost interchangeable. They're literally both 10 out of 10 albums. You know, pretty much like or love everything on it. But I just like that little bit extra power and oomph from the guitars and the rhythm section on Bark.
Yeah, and I think that you know, if you kind of look at Jake's career and all the recordings that he's done, that the tone that he had on Bark at the Moon is actually pretty unique, and he really hasn't revisited that kind of sound in subsequent recordings. And I mean, you listen to his playing on the Badlands albums, and it gets this kind of bluesy, fuzzy tone, which that's probably the closest to Jake's, you know, right here. That's where he's at. But I love his tone on the Bark at the Moon album, and I don't think the production captured that on the follow-up record like they did on the first. So I agree with you. I think Bark is a great sounding album. The guitar playing is terrific, and I think Ozzy really wanted Jake to be that kind of, you know, that next big partner, kind of like Randy was. And unfortunately, it didn't really work out that way, which is a shame. But that's history, right? That's rock and roll history. So my number one, no surprise, is Diary from '81. Like I said, I think this album is really an improvement upon the debut. And even when it came out, I was like, holy cow, I didn't think, because, you know, at the time, you know, I was a teenager, right? I thought, you know, Ozzy's back, great. But I constantly, and maybe you went through the same thing, I constantly felt this kind of like competition between Sabbath and Ozzy. Like, you know, the Dio came in, I loved Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. I was like, yes. And you had this direct competition between those 2 albums and Ozzy's first 2 albums. And I usually took the side of Sabbath because I was, you know, a diehard Sabbath fan and I loved Ronnie. But man, this album like really, really won me over. And I think that Randy's playing on here is so special that it's really sad when you kind of think of what could have been had Randy not, you know, been involved in that crash. And I think that we would be talking about him as one of the greatest guitar players of all time had he continued on and lived and done more. And I think that I think his playing from this album to this album is leagues better. I think he's one of those guys who probably play like 15 hours a day, and he would, you know, there's no telling what he would have done. But on this album, I mean, Over the Mountain, great. Flying High Again, great. I Love You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Believers, kick ass. The title track is probably my favorite Ozzy song of all time, Diary of a Madman. But yeah, you know, you're right. Little Dolls, you know, Tonight. Sato is actually a pretty good song, but I still think to me it's numero uno when it comes to Ozzy solo.
Cool. Right on.
So I don't know. For me, this was a kind of fun exercise because again, there's a lot of albums here in this catalog that I hadn't visited in quite some time, and my initial it's always funny when like your initial like kind of the synopsis of a group of albums really doesn't change much after like a decade or so. I tell you, the latter period, I didn't love it back then. I still don't love it now, but I think that he's got some classics, I think. So I don't know. It's sometimes you go and you revisit stuff that you haven't heard in years and your opinions totally change. I found it didn't really this time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm amazing how huge Ozzy was too, right? And how he survived throughout all the eras of heavy metal being down. He's just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and all these records sold a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised how many multi platinum albums he has. They obviously got spaced out by quite a few years as time went on. But yeah, he's just a really nice guy. He's a really charming, down to earth guy. And that's why people love him. But all these different eras. But to reiterate what we said earlier on, I mean, I really want all these guys. There's not a single guy that I don't. I mean, I love all these artists along the way to death. Alice Cooper, like I say, Elvis gets to everybody, right? But I want them to have bands. I just want them to have that gang that they travel with and make those songs with. I hate the idea of outside songwriters, and Ozzy's had way too much of that over the years. So yeah, I just, in the 80s, even though the lineups changed a lot, it always felt like, at the time, it felt like this was a gang and this was going to stick together, but then it doesn't stick together and things happen. But every record, I think, through the 80s does feel like a band.
Yeah. Well, so what do you attest, and without derailing the conversation, so what do you attest to the fact that this catalog has sold so well, despite like all the different lineups and musicians and outside writers, and yet during a lot of the same period, Black Sabbath, which is the huge band that he came from, really struggled with sales and general awareness of that catalog? Because, you look at like all the Tony Martin years and, the sporadic stuff in the 90s. I mean, Sabbath was doing like no business compared to what Ozzy was doing. I mean, why is that? I mean, we know Ozzy's a great, nice guy, and Ozzy's the big character, and, everybody loves Ozzy. But, I mean, I look at some of those kind of albums from Sabbath that most the casual fans have probably never heard, and there's some really strong stuff there, and which I would probably rank higher than a lot of these Ozzy albums. So what do you attest to that? I mean, it's like what happened?
Well, a few things. I would say, biting the head off of a bat, biting the head off of a pigeon, all the drinking, the ballads, the
videos. He was all over MTV, right?
Great videos, yeah. The party rocking songs, the picketing, he's the Prince of Darkness. Also things like the Jagger Richards and Perry Tyler thing of having at least a very distinctive guitarist alongside, arm around the guitarist, whether that's Jake or Randy or Zach. So there's this team feel of two superstars in the band kind of all the time.
Yeah.
That's pretty important. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a stage show. They always put a lot of money into the stage show. A lot of drama all the time, a lot of Sharon drama, a lot of Ozzy drama, people coming in and out, the lawsuits. So it's like, I guess there's a lot of not great reasons because they just seem to be in the news all the time, right?
And people like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be frank. Tony Martin, as great as he is, not much of a character, right? He's just the guy singing, right? It's not he's not Dio, he's not Ozzy, and
there's another thing. I mean, to bring up Sabbath again, I mean the constant feuds with Sabbath all the time, and all the comparing with Sabbath, and then going back into the band and coming back out of the band. I mean, that all gives you a high profile too. So just I think also people like a short, succinct story they can understand. And when you can focus on a single person in a band like an Alice Cooper or an Ozzy Osbourne, it's just a simple package. It's a one-person package. So that's also, the messaging is really simple as time goes on. It doesn't take a lot to understand, that there's this cool front man, this charming dude, you know, and always in his interviews, always very frank and honest, right? And always getting into trouble, like we say, you know, peeing on the Alamo and all that kind of stuff, right? So wearing women's dresses and hanging out with Motley Crue. I can't remember if he's the guy that snorted pee or snorted ants or snorted both, but
yeah,
you know,
well,
so
yeah, I know. I
that.
definitely know the ant story. Yeah, he definitely did that.
Yeah, so yeah, and just there's just always so much to talk about with Ozzy, but yeah, and it was always a big production. These albums, when they came out, there was a lot of hoopla. They were very expensively made. You know, a lot of songs that didn't show up on the albums too. So this is a band that actually was trying pretty hard all along the way too. Good lyrics too. Good lyrics coming along. Unfortunately, most of that doesn't come from Ozzy. That's not a great part of the story. And early on, there was a lot of Bob Daisley involved in that. But yeah, so obviously there's about 20 reasons for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this was fun. Thanks, Martin, for coming on and talking some Ozzy with us.
Yeah, very cool. This was a blast. So it was painful too, obviously, because I don't want to put down Ozzy, but and you don't want, you know, when we do these worst first, you don't want all the latest stuff to be the stuff, you know, that you don't like very much. But
right.
Unfortunately, when you're old and nostalgia is put on it, and you start not relating later on to the stuff, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. And like I said, I had a tough time with this as well. And yeah, you want to talk gushingly about Ozzy because Ozzy's a legend. But, you know, you start dissecting these albums, you're like, yeah, some of them are just really not that great. You want them to be, but it doesn't always work out that way. But you know what? The great albums are great. The not so great albums, well, you know what? They got some fun stuff on there too. So it's a bet. You do the best you can with the catalog you're given, right? So that's really what you do. So anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks again to Martin. He's coming back. We've already got a couple shows lined up. So we'll see him next week for some more fun talk of metal and catalogs and all that. Should we just tell them what we're doing? Well, let's just spill the beans. So we are going to be ranking the studio catalog. We're going to put two of them together. We're going to do Montrose and Gamma all in one show. And then we are also going to do top 10 songs of Gillan. So Martin and I both love Ian Gillan. We love the Gillan band. I'm pretty stoked to be doing that with him because I think that's a catalog that is so underrated. And so strong. If that's going to be a hard one, picking 10 songs from that catalog, because like every album is jam packed with some really real goodies. So that's going to be fun. So Martin's coming back, so we'll see him real soon. Have a good rest of the weekend, everybody. Martin, take care. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Bye bye.